So today's gospel, as we celebrate the feast of the Ascension, we kind of get Jesus' succession plan, his entrustment of his mission to the 11 that are gathered. Their numbers will be beefed back up to 12 shortly. And he entrusts them with his mission. So it could look like simple succession planning. But we want to be just paying a little bit more attention to that because I think it's a unique kind of succession plan. If you are perhaps the founder of a company or you're the leader of the organisation and you anoint your successor, let me put it this way, I think that the healthy thing to do is to say, well, I expect the spirit of what I've done, the basic impetus of the organisation or the company to continue. But if you're wise, you know that the person following on from you has to be able to make it his or her own as well. They have to be able to be faithful to what's been given, but take it in the new directions that new circumstances demand. And that's not quite what's going on here, because Jesus makes it really clear that the church is actually to continue his mission. And the key is fidelity. It will look different as it unfolds throughout history, but there's a faithfulness to what Jesus has given that's beyond the power of the successors, Peter and the other apostles, to change. They need to be faithful, even as they will have to work it out. What does it look like in practice as they go forward and as the churches continue to go forward throughout history? All the way down to our own time, all the way down to now. And so I wanted to take the opportunity today just to reflect for a moment about our mission here in the parish, or really actually in the parishes of St Joseph's and St Declan's. You see, the mission of Jesus that is given to the church is a big thing. It's about bringing the good news, bringing God's love into every part of human life and existence. This week, as we celebrate Laudato Si Week, is one aspect of that mission, where we recognise the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, and we realise the need for the stewardship of creation and the care of those who are suffering and hurting in very practical ways. But that's only one dimension of the mission, and it includes all sorts of other ways in which we might reach out to others, the way we would want our society to reflect the values and the gospel of Christ. At the heart of it, though, is Jesus' words where he says you've got to make disciples of all the nations. That in the gospel today, Jesus provides us with the core from which everything else flows. It's disciples of Jesus that help steward creation. It's disciples of Jesus that bring justice and the influence of Christ to politics, to the media, to every aspect of society. There's about 10 different homilies in that. But at the core of it, it's that we are called to make disciples of Jesus. And that sense of mission, in that big sense, and there's then also in its core to make disciples, has a lot to do with why 2.5 years ago, the Missionaries of God's Love, when we were asked to assume responsibility and care for St Joseph's, we felt, when we took that to prayer, we felt that it was a way for us to continue the mission in this place, to continue the mission in this part of Sydney. As we prayed about it, we felt this was a way for the mission to go forward. And so we said yes to assuming responsibility for St Joseph. And what we've done is, as the parishes have been twinned, they've been twinned for about 2.5 years, we've sought to do everything that we possibly could do together, we've sought to do together. That's a little bit different. St Declan's and Our Lady of Fatima at Peakhurst have been twinned for over 40 years, or just on 40 years, but the thing that those two parishes share is the priests. With St Declan's and St Joseph's, we've sought to do everything together that we can. And so there's one administration for the two parishes. There's, when we do Alpha, that's across the two parishes, when we do various outreach activities in practical ways like the Hope-Bound ministry, and care for, various ways in which we care for others, that all happens together as well. Faith formation, times of prayer together, all of these things we do in concert with the two parishes. Also, the governance of the two parishes happens together as well. There's been one parish council with representatives from both St Joseph's and St Declan's. So you can hear how we've sought to do everything we can together. Obviously, the masses are separate, the two schools are separate. There are a number of things that have to remain distinct, but as much as we possibly can, we've sought to do it together. So what I went to the parish council with just before Easter was a proposal that we would formalise really what's already been happening, and that formalisation would be that the parishes would be amalgamated. So to move from being twinned to being amalgamated, to being one parish. And it really is a formalising of what's already happened, what we've already been seeking to do. For most people, they won't notice the difference really. You'll walk into St Declan's, or if you're at St Joseph's, you walk into St Joseph's, Mass will be the same, the provision of other sacraments will be the same. The changes that have happened have already taken place in pretty much every respect. There are two things that would still have to happen. One of those is that the finances of the two parishes would come together, and so there'd be one set of finances. That's important because it's actually really a little bit of an act of justice. So I mentioned that we're trying to do all these things that we can do together in common. All of the staff that works across both parishes, all of them but one, is paid for from St Declan's. And so there's a sense in which St Declan's is underwriting something of the ministry that happens at St Joseph's, which is fine. Obviously, St Declan's is a much bigger parish, but we want it to be an equitable thing as well. And so to bring the finances together makes that much easier to be able to do. The other change that would happen would be that we would change the name. Now, St Declan's Church will always be St Declan's Church. You can't change the name of a church. St Joseph's Church will always be St Joseph's Church. But the parish, because it's a new reality, one parish, would need a new name. And so the proposal for our new parish name is that we would be called the Parish of the Transfiguration. We thought that adding a third saint might get really confusing. And so we've taken one of the great mysteries of Jesus' life, the Transfiguration, as our inspiration. The reason for that's twofold. Firstly, if you go to St Joseph's, on the back wall of the sanctuary is a beautiful mural of the Transfiguration. So that's probably the recognisable feature of the church in many ways. And of course, here at St Declan's, the image of the risen Jesus is very central for us. The feast of the Transfiguration, or the mystery of the Transfiguration, and the feast or the mystery of Easter are the same mystery. Really, the Transfiguration is a glimpse of the risen, glorified Jesus. And so we thought that that was a way to speak of the unity of the two places that acknowledges and respects the separate histories that they've had, even though St Joseph's originally came from St Declan's as well. Okay, so St Joseph's started out from St Declan's, they are coming back together. What does that all look like from here? As I mentioned, I proposed it to the Parish Council. The Parish Council, after a time of prayer and discernment, unanimously offered their support for the proposal. And then we spoke a couple of weeks ago to the ministry leaders here in the parish, across both parishes again. We also spoke to, last week I spoke to the parishioners of St Joseph's. Today, or this weekend, it's the parishioners of St Declan's, to just explain the desire for the amalgamation to take place. What will happen next is you'll have a chance to think about that and pray about it. If you've got questions, I'd welcome those questions to be able to speak through to some of the particular issues that are involved. And then next month, we'd have the opportunity for people to gather, and a survey will go out, and you're invited to answer two principal questions. The first question is, do you support the amalgamation of the two parishes? And the second question is, do you support the new name? So you get to have a very significant say in that. We actually need a significant amount of parishioners to support it for it to go ahead. Assuming that that does happen, then I would write to the Archbishop explaining the process that we've been on. I then go to the Council of Priests and I talk to them in the Archdiocese about it. Assuming that all goes well, the Archbishop writes a letter and establishes the new parish. To go back to where I started, all of this would be oriented, I think, by our sense of mission. That's got to be the primary concern here, I think. It's about how do we see the mission of the church in this particular place go forward. And I'm pleased to say that that numbers of people going to church at St Joseph's have increased, as numbers here have increased too. We see great engagement in the different ministries, whether it's outreach to others who are suffering or hurting, or whether it's reaching out through Alpha and helping people to come to know the person of Christ. In all of these different ways, we see great things happening across the two places. We only want that to grow and to expand and develop into the future. So I really would invite you to take this question to prayer, especially in this Mass, but in the weeks to come. But I think that the crucial question to take to prayer is, what does the Lord want for us? What does Jesus want for this situation? And the guiding part of that is what's going to best advance the mission of the church in this place. It is part of a wider program of parishes coming together for the sake of the mission that's happening around the Archdiocese. I didn't wake up one day and think this was going to be a good idea. It's part of a bigger purpose and plan. But I am very supportive of it, encouraging of it, because I think we're already beginning to see the fruit, the impact, the difference that this is making across the two locations and places. I think the best, to be honest, is yet to come. I think there's more that lies ahead of us, especially as they come together. So in this Mass, let's pray for that. Let's ask the Lord to lead and guide us as we go forward on this journey together.